Hello, and welcome to Radiance Revealed, the podcast. I'm your host, Dr. Jen Haley. I'm a board-certified dermatologist, fitness enthusiast, nutrition expert, and global explorer that over the years has uncovered that your skin is a true representation of your internal health. Each week, we will chat with leading health, wellness, and even spiritual experts who will reveal secrets to true health and vitality. My goal is to help you change small habits to give you the power to create a more balanced, aligned, and elevated version of yourself. Now let's dive in. Hi, everyone. Welcome back to the Radiance Revealed podcast, and I'm your host, Dr. Jen Haley. And I was a guest on a recent podcast episode where I neglected to mention the function of the skin as a detoxification organ. So this is what I'm focusing on in this week's episode. So our body needs to detoxify all the chemicals we come into contact with on a daily basis. There's hundreds and hundreds every single day that we come into contact with in our environment. You know, things that obviously are man-made, like plastics and chemicals in our skincare and our food, but also just living in the environment and being a breathing human, we metabolize metabolic waste and our body needs to detoxify certain things. So our skin is one of the mechanisms in which we detoxify things. So we have sweat, we have urine, defecation, pooping, and breathing, exhaling. Every time we exhale, we're burning fat and we're removing toxins. And for women, menstruation, having your period every month is also a beneficial way to detoxify. So I'm going to focus this week's episode on the skin as a detoxification organ and the purpose of sweating and why sweating is so key. Whether you're sweating during exercise, you're sweating in a sauna, you're sweating in hot yoga like I did last night. Sweating is a beneficial thing. So sweating, when we sweat, what is in sweat? So sweat is primarily water, and there's also tiny amounts of other substances. There's ammonia, urea, salts, sugar, and bacteria as well. And sweating, as I mentioned, will help detoxify. But why do we even sweat in the first place? We primarily sweat to control our body temperature. So we're warm-blooded organisms. We try to stay in the same temperature of our body that promotes our metabolic processes to run most effectively and efficiently. So sweating is the primary mechanism of how humans cool themselves so that we can regulate temperature. Okay. So as the sweat is made and it's excreted onto our skin and then it's evaporated, it cools the skin and it cools the blood beneath the skin. Okay. And that cooling effect is what helps to regulate our temperature. We have different types of sweat glands. We have eccrine sweat glands distributed all over our body. And then we have apocrine sweat glands, which are in our axilla, our armpits, and our groin primarily. And those are more hormonally related and developed really during puberty. And those are the ones that produce more scent because of the hormones. So please note that the sweat composition will change. So what your sweat is composed of and the scent of your sweat, it will change depending on what toxins you are eliminating from your body and if you have a medical condition or disease. So as a physician, gosh, I've been a physician now since 1998. For over 25 years, I've been a physician. And I can smell diseases when I walk in a room. I'm very gifted in having a strong, well, it might not always be a gift, but I have a very strong olfactory sense. So smell plays a large part in my ability to diagnose people. Sometimes it's not great when I'm on a trail and I could smell people that walk by. But when I walk into a room, I can smell illness. I could smell certain bacteria, like Pseudomonas has a very particular smell to it, almost like an acidic, sweet smell to it. And certain other conditions like kidney diseases and things have certain smells in on the humans. So how we excrete through our skin will give us a certain odor, and it can be a warning sign that there's a medical condition going on underneath. Or it may just be the fact that you are excreting a lot of toxins. Like in firefighters, there's protocols for firefighters so that they can remove a lot of the toxins from their bodies and eliminate these toxins as quickly as possible before they do significant damage inside the body. So let's talk about some of the health benefits of sweating. Okay. So our body intuitively knows what it needs to eliminate from the body. And we just want to support our natural mechanisms so that our body can optimize itself, right? So by sweating, we're doing some of that. And it's important to sweat. People have different thresholds on how quickly they sweat. Personally, I have Hashimoto's thyroiditis and I struggle with low thyroid. So I don't sweat as quickly. I could sit in one of those infrared saunas set at 140 degrees for 45 minutes and not break a sweat. Now, when I went to Finland at the biohacker retreat and we were in a proper Finnish sauna set at 80 degrees Celsius, which is about 176 degrees Fahrenheit, I was sweating within 10 minutes. So that was a great experience for me. So everybody has different thresholds at which they sweat at, but we do want to sweat on a regular basis. And doing something like a sauna simulates exercise for your cardiovascular system and for your body. And if you exercise, that's great as well. I do. I like it. So one of my favorite benefits from sweating is detoxification of heavy metals. So when I was a resident in dermatology, didn't have much of a salary, and I was eating tuna fish every single day for lunch. I thought that was healthy, right? Till I realized how high in mercury it was. And I had my mercury levels checked and they were like 10 times normal. They were super, super high. So needed to detoxify that from my body. And sweating is one of the ways to do that. So sweating detoxifies heavy metals from the body. Urine does as well, but sweat can be even a more potent form of eliminating toxins from heavy metals from our body than urine. Specifically, sweat can help eliminate mercury, like mercury from tuna or from larger fish. And we're told to eat fish because fish are healthy, but the larger the fish, the more it can accumulate mercury, unfortunately. So you want to really stick with like sardines, or I like wild Alaskan salmon with astaxanthin and smaller fish. Arsenic. Arsenic can be found in rice, and it's found in chicken that eat rice. So chicken and rice can both have high levels of arsenic. And then there's certain sort of processes in wood making that can cause high arsenic levels. So there's a lot of sources of arsenic, but those are the top three off the top of my head. Cadmium can be eliminated through sweat. And if you like chocolate as much as I do, you may have elevated cadmium levels because chocolate tends to pick up cadmium from the soil. So you may have higher cadmium levels and walking around just from eating chocolate, and lead from the body. So, there are normal ranges of lead on blood tests, but really the normal range of lead should be zero. It should be zero. Okay. So sweat will help to eliminate some of these heavy metals, mercury, arsenic, cadmium, and lead in particular. And the thing that I notice is I see a lot of people that will have breakouts from sweating and exercise. And that's really contributed, that's caused by a number of things. So if you find that you're exercising and you're getting worsening back knee, for instance, like breakouts on your back, there's a couple things coming into play here. So as you sweat, your body's excreting these toxins, excreting oil, excreting dead skin cells, and excreting bacteria that's not wanted in the skin. So you want to wash all of your sweat off as soon as possible after you sweat or exercise or hot yoga or sauna. Get in a cold, cooler shower, rinse that sweat off of your body. You don't necessarily need to use a lot of soap. and dehydrate and dry out your skin and remove the natural oils, but you do need to remove the sweat from your skin as soon as possible. The other reason why I see people develop acne in areas where they're sweating a lot and there might be friction is because of the clothing and the friction. So the hair follicles, the pores, as they're excreting sweat, if there's friction going on, there's irritation of the hair follicles. And in response, there can be an inflammatory papule or breakout afterwards. So wear clothing that's not going to cause a lot of friction to the area. So those are the biggest things: friction, not showering off, and then occlusion. So having tight clothes that don't allow the, let's just say, pores to breathe or allow the follicles to extrude the particles from the sweat gland. So we want the skin to breathe. Okay. So those are the biggest things that you can do to help not get breakouts from sweating. So sweating should actually help reduce breakouts. If you're getting more breakouts from sweating, it's because of occlusion, friction, and not cleaning off the sweat as quickly as possible. Another little tip that I'll often recommend for people to do is to get a spray containing salicylic acid. And salicylic acid is a natural anti-inflammatory, and it is drawn to oil glands and it helps exfoliate. So just say you're doing hot yoga or a hard cardio workout session in, a sports bra or some tight clothing. Get out of the clothing, rinse your skin off in the gym shower or wherever you may be. Take a towel, a wet towel, clean it off, and then spray a little bit of salicylic acid containing toner or spray to the area. There's a couple companies that make some, and they're just salicylic acid kind of sprays that you can do to the area, and that will kind of keep the area from breaking out. And like, for instance, I did hot yoga last night. I'm not going to lie, I don't love it. It's very hard for me. I don't enjoy being hot. And especially, I joke because I live in Arizona. So in the summer, it can be 116, 120 degrees Fahrenheit here. And then in the winter, we go to hot yoga where the temperature last night was 125 degrees at 45% humidity. And I'm thinking to myself, okay, even when we're not hot here, we like to practice being hot. So I'll go once a week because my body feels really good afterwards and my clothes are drenched, and I know that I'm detoxifying my body as well as the other benefits that I receive from yoga, from a mindfulness place, a mobility place, and many other things. So I'll go, and I always leave right after Shavasana, and I run to the bathroom. I take my clothes off. I take a towel. I wet it. I rub down my body as much as possible and then dry it off and put on a fresh set of clothes before I can get home and shower. I live less than 10 minutes away, but I do not want that sweat to sit on my skin for even 10 minutes before I can get in the shower, because guess what? The sweat is going to dry, right? We just mentioned that the sweat comes out, it dries, it cools down our skin and our blood vessels below the skin. Now, all of those heavy metals, the toxins, everything that my body wanted to extrude and eliminate from my body by using my sweat and my skin as a detoxification organ, all of that material, all of those chemicals are going to sit on my skin. And over the next 10 to 15 minutes, some of it's going to get absorbed back into my skin. I don't want that. I don't want those things, those rejected chemicals from my body to get absorbed back into my body. So rinse it off as soon as possible, even if it's a hand towel in the bathroom. Don't use wipes because wipes have chemicals in them. Just get water and a towel. Okay. So we know that sweat helps to remove heavy metals. What else does it do? It helps to remove other chemicals. So our world is full of chemicals. They make our lives very convenient and safe in many ways, yet our bodies don't want them. So BPA, for instance, everyone knows that I have a hate relationship with plastic. Not just BPA, even BPA-free plastics have other BPs in it. So they're all terrible. I'm sitting here, I have got a Yeti mug from Longevity Labs, Go Spermidine. I've got a Hydro Flask. So I carry these Metal containers everywhere I go, especially good when you travel. So you don't drink out of plastic. Even if it's BPA plastic, BPA free plastic, it's still plastic. So in 2004, a study showed that 93% of people had BPA in their body. I'm sure even though I try to avoid plastic, I'm still getting it. Probably close to 100% of people have BPA in their body in first world countries. And unfortunately, it's even excreted in breast milk and through the umbilical cord and shared with our babies before they're even born. So sweating is an effective way to help remove BPA and some of these other BPs. And sweating is also effective in removing certain PCBs. So the PCBs, polychlorinated biphenyls, and BPDESs, which are flame retardants from the body. So sweating can help remove all these things. You don't need to know all the names, but basically there's a lot of things that we're coming into contact with all day long. I have these new cool air purifiers in my house made by a company called Molecule, Molekule. I have a 20% discount code if you DM me. I can share that with you, or I'll try to remember to put it in the show notes. But they read the air in my house. And when I have the windows and the doors closed, and I'm cooking, especially if my son cooks steak because he cooks it really high and it makes a lot of volatile organic compounds, then the air purifier will read an unhealthy level of air quality. So as the doors are closed, which is most of the time in the winter and often in the summer when we have the air conditioning on, our flame retardant furniture, our flooring in our houses are releasing a lot of these chemicals. So our bodies absorb these chemicals through our breath, through our skin, sitting on things all day long. We're just coming into contact with chemicals because we're not living in the dirt in the middle of the woods. Okay. So it's just a fact. So by sweating, we're helping to remove a lot of these chemicals. And people who exercise on a regular basis do have lower levels of chemicals in their bodies, whether it's the BPs, whether it's the flame retardant chemicals, or whether it's the heavy metals. So sweating, whether you're exercising really hard, whether you're doing sauna properly, hot yoga, whatever it takes, those are ways to use your skin as a beautiful organ to help remove these chemicals and heavy metal toxins from the body. And there are protocols that are used in firefighter industry where you can take niacin along with sweating and it helps the body better mobilize some of these stored toxins and eliminate them. And I went to as I mentioned earlier, I went to the biohacking retreat in Estonia, and Temu and Ali, they created a biohackers manual, and there's a protocol in there on what you can do to help eliminate some of these toxins from your body in a more scientific way than just sweating. But I'm a very simple person. I'm like, just sweat frequently. And as far as promoting healthier skin, sweating can also help promote healthier skin. And, I'm all about that. And we do know that promoting healthier skin starts from the inside out. We talked about that. So removing the chemicals so we could support our body to naturally heal itself is always the key. But there's some other things that sweating does to help promote healthy skin. So there are glycoproteins in sweat that bind to bacteria and help remove it from the body. So we want bacteria on our skin. We have a skin microbiome. And when we promote its health, it works optimally, right? We don't want to remove all the bacteria from our body. We just want to eliminate the bad bacteria. And sweating helps reach this homeostasis. Sweating also produces an antimicrobial peptide called dermacidin. And that also helps to destroy some of the harmful bacteria on the skin. So, like I said earlier, if you are someone who is breaking out on a regular basis from sweating, it likely doesn't have to do with sweating itself. It has to do with the friction, the occlusion, maybe having broken skin that's coming into contact with foreign dirt that doesn't belong on your skin. and also washing off the sweat afterwards. And in athletes, for instance, that share gear or have dirty gear that might contain Staph aureus, if you have a break in your skin and you come into contact with contaminated equipment, you're going to get an infection, right? But when your barrier is maintained, your barrier is healthy, and you come into contact with other things, nothing's going to affect you. Okay. So it's all about maintaining that healthy skin barrier. Okay. So, uh, the other thing that sweating does is sweating can boost cell turnover. So, what does that mean? What's the translation in that? Basically, it helps the skin naturally renew and regenerate. So, sweating acts as a natural exfoliant with the salt and the minerals being removed through the sweat gland from your body. The sweat also helps to remove the dead adherent skin cells and prevent the buildup of dirt and other debris on the surface of your skin. And then consequentially, the sweating also naturally brings the moisture to the surface of the skin, which then again helps your skin to look healthy and be hydrated. Okay. So that's really key. So when you're sweating, you're enhancing that natural renewal and regeneration processes of your skin. So the sweating kind of brings everything up to where it needs to be, and it stimulates stem cells from below to keep cycling through. So we're looking at it as this beautiful cycle of discharging, of eliminating toxins and allowing fresh cells to come up above. Okay. So, I mean, with this being said, obviously you want to be nourishing your skin from within, from what you're eating, what you're consuming. I love bean minerals. They have a fulvic acid, they have a humic acid because we're not getting as many minerals from our plants, from our diets, because our soil is over-farmed. So our soil is very deficient in a lot of micronutrients. And these minerals, we take them for granted. They're so necessary for all of our metabolic processes. So if we're deficient in zinc or magnesium or, all the other things we need, we're not going to be able to have our normal metabolic processes and function properly in our body. So we want to make sure we're replenishing these nutrients and getting enough water. I like to aim for clear urine to have enough water to hydrate our bodies, to hydrate our skin, our brain, everything else. So remember that, please, because as we're eliminating, we want to replenish. We want to get rid of the bad and bring in good, bring in healthy, bring in optimal. Okay, so the other thing about sweating is it dilates blood vessels and boosts circulation. And we know that boosting circulation and having dilated blood vessels and enhanced blood flow to the skin is going to deliver those amazing nutrients you're bringing in through your diet. It's going to deliver oxygen so that you can have the rosy glow you want and healthy skin and feed the stem cells to make fresh skin. And it's also going to be able to eliminate the metabolic waste products, bring it through your liver, bring it through your kidneys, and eliminate it through your body. Okay. So we want that improvement in circulation and blood flow, whether it be through exercise, sauna, hot yoga, or all of the above. Okay. So we know that sauna and exercise boost cardiovascular performance. And I like, if you're going to do hot yoga or sauna, I like doing it in the evening if you have a choice, because it also helps with stress relief. It helps relax you and it doesn't give you a bad hair day. That's just me. Okay. And then the other thing is it also can help speed recovery after exercise. So if you're exercising hard in the morning and then you do your sauna at night, it will help to help you recover from exercise. And it can help boost growth hormone production, which is your body's way of naturally repairing itself. Now, the study I saw on growth hormone production, I think it was like increasing it by 32 times normal, was doing a sauna at between 80 and 100 degrees Celsius, which is really hot. That's like 180 to 200 degrees Celsius for an hour twice a day. I honestly don't know anyone who would do that. Even my Finnish friends, I think maybe they would do like half of that. So that's a little extreme. But what we do know about growth hormone uh, bursts and improvement and elevation of growth hormone from sauna use is that if you're doing sauna every day, you don't get as much of a bump. So just like everything, your body's going to reach homeostasis and it does better when you do little bursts. So I find doing this hot yoga, doing the sauna like twice a week for me, 3 times the most is where I find the most benefit for myself personally. And I think a lot of the studies support, I think, doing about 30 minutes at 180 degrees 3 times a week. Don't quote me on that. That's just off the top of my head. So a couple of points that I wanted to reiterate. Number one, remove sweat as soon as possible. Get those toxins off. We don't want them sitting there and getting reabsorbed. And we don't want the pores to get plugged from stagnant sweat. So as I mentioned, we're eliminating toxins. We're lifting off some of the stuck oil glands with the skin cells that need to exfoliate. So if we're not washing that off, it's going to cause plugging of the pores with the debris, the oil, the dirt, and the dead skin cells, and it's going to cause breakouts as opposed to help eliminate breakouts. We want to avoid occlusion, wear breathable clothing, avoid friction and rubbing. So wear clothing that's not going to cause friction and rubbing of the area, because that will worsen acne. It may cause dermatitis and cause irritation and skin chafing. Pregnant women, children, obviously, avoid excessive heat. That's not going to be good for you. And then anyone with a health condition, and, everyone listening to this knows I'm not giving medical advice here. So you need to check with your doctor and make sure you're clear before going into these high heat situations, because they are simulating exercise and cardiovascular stress. So if your body can't take that, that might not be right for you. And then for skin conditions, so with skin conditions like rosacea, it may make rosacea worse. So hot yoga, sauna can make rosacea worse, because with rosacea, a couple things about rosacea. So we know it's a skin sensitivity issue. So your skin is more sensitive, but really the question is, why is it more sensitive? We have found a link between rosacea and gut health. So with rosacea, we're seeing a lot of people with rosacea have small intestinal bacterial overgrowth, or SIBO, where there's food stagnant in the gut and it's like not digesting properly, and it's causing a lot of issues where bad bacteria are basically overgrowing. And that's where we'll see rosacea flares. And then the other thing on a physiological perspective with rosacea is there's vasomotor instability. So what does that mean in English? Basically, the blood vessels are not stable. So I have struggled with rosacea in the past. It comes and goes. I can't always predict it. And certain things for me will make it worse. Like if I'm skiing and then I go sit next to a fireplace, my face will turn beet red. And that's vasomotor instability, or unstable blood vessels, where it's like the blood vessels just go crazy and go haywire. So anytime you go to extremes, it can make the blood vessels get a little bit worse, and it might have a harder time going back to homeostasis. So just if you're someone who struggles with rosacea, keep that in the back of your mind. And the cool thing about rosacea is as it becomes more and more stable over time, it's less sensitive to all of these other triggers. So the more you can kind of hone in on avoiding the triggers and keeping your skin without a flare, the less the triggers will affect you in the long run. So just be aware that if you have rosacea, that the excessive heat can make it a little bit worse. So you may want to start slow. Okay, start slow. The other condition, which I also struggle with, is melasma. So melasma is a pigmentary condition, more common in women because we find that it's estrogen sensitive, and it can come out if you take birth control pills when you're pregnant. and your estrogen levels are high, and just in women in general, men can have it, but way more common of a condition in women. And sunlight, visible light, can make melasma worse. It's basically brown patches on the face. And I'm trying to see. No, you can't really see it. I think I have it under pretty good control, but I have a patch. If you're on YouTube, you could see I have a little patch like right here on my right cheek. Um, but I have everything. I do laser, I do skincare, so many things for my melasma, and it's still very, very tricky. It's a very hard condition to treat. I've treated hundreds of patients with it, maybe thousands at this point. And I'd say in Hawaii, I had a really, really hard time getting it under control with my patients there. Even my patients that diligently wore tinted mineral-based sunscreen every single day and a hat, we still had a hard time getting it under control because guess what? Melasma is also heat sensitive. So I have Hispanic patients who like to cook a lot and they're in front of the stove, can't get the melasma under control. I have patients who love hot yoga. Guess what? Melasma is not getting under good control. So if you struggle with melasma and your pigmentation is really important, be aware that the heat, the sauna, the hot yoga can make it worse. Is it a reason not to exercise? I'd say no. I'd say you definitely should exercise. Just make sure you're like out in the morning, out in the evening, indoor exercising, avoiding the sun exposure. And the other thing about melasma that I wanted to mention was that um, visible light can also affect it. So, like the light from the computer screen and the light from the overhead lights. So, being diligent about sun protection is really key. And then, as melasma, this dynamic, unpredictable pigmentation that is worsened from heat, as it gets better over time, it doesn't flare as easily. So, it's just similar to the rosacea in the fact that like in the beginning, it can be very volatile and unpredictable and flare a lot. But over time, as it becomes more stable and in remission, let's call it, it will not as flare as easily. So if you do struggle with melasma, maybe something like a sauna blanket would be of benefit, where your body is getting warm and your body is sweating, but your face is not. That might be something you want to consider. Or when I do hot yoga, I get some ice towels and I put it on my face as often as possible. So that's what I wanted to talk about as far as sweating goes. I wanted to make this a brief conversation about sweating because I talk often about how our skin represents our internal health. And it's just like any other organ. The appearance of your skin is a really good representation of the health of all of your organs. And it's also a clue if there's something else going on in other organs if your skin isn't healthy. Just like I mentioned earlier with rosacea. With rosacea, it might be a clue that there's something going on with your gut. With melasma, it might be a clue that your estrogen is out of balance with the other hormones. So we look at the skin as a clue to what's going on inside the body, but our skin is also just this amazing force field to protect us from the outside world, to protect us from infection, to keep our body, our water in our body so we're not dehydrated, and also to protect us from chemicals. But it also is this amazing detoxification organ that allows us to get rid of the chemicals from within our body so that all of our organs can function better. So, in addition to all of the other detoxification organs we have, like our liver and our kidneys, many other things, so is our skin. It's often overlooked, but it's essential and it's key. Now, what happens when you sweat too much? When you sweat too much, that's called hyperhidrosis. So, hyper, too much, hydrosis means to sweat. So if you sweat more than you need to regulate your temperature, that's when we call it hyperhidrosis. So your temperature is regulated and you're still sweating. It can be a really big issue. It can be embarrassing for a lot of people. I mean, especially if you're in sales or you're a politician or you're someone in the public eye and you're sweating through your clothing, it can be very embarrassing. So that's the main thing. First and foremost, we want to make sure As a physician, you want to make sure you go to your physician and check and make sure there's no medical conditions going on that are causing hyperhidrosis. It can be caused by hyperthyroidism, by a thyroid that's too high. It can be caused by a number of other conditions, or it can just be familial. It could just run in the family and generation after generation, it can be familial. It could be focal. It could just be limited to your palms and your soles and your underarms, or it could be generalized and affected everywhere. I'll briefly mention some of the treatments. There's an oral medication called glycopyrrolate that can be taken for, I find it works well for generalized hyperhidrosis. The issue is that it can make everything dry. So we try to walk the line between helping with sweating to decrease sweating and also to not make your mouth dry and your eyes dry and have issues with everything. And I find that that works well for familial, for when it runs in the family, hyperhidrosis that's generalized. It's a prescription only in the United States. And if someone is struggling with focal hyperhidrosis, so like politicians that I treat or Hollywood actors or salesmen, if they're sweating in their armpits, I really like Botox for those areas. So Botox weakens the muscle that pumps out the sweat. So when the muscle that pumps out the sweat doesn't work because it's weaker, not paralyzed, we don't paralyze anything. When it's weaker, you don't sweat as much. And that involves doing Botox or other neuromodulator injections. There's 5 FDA approved in the United States: Botox, Daxxify, Jeuveau, Xeomin, and Dysport. Any of those 5 can be used. Actually, I haven't used Daxxify yet, but I've used all the other 4 for reducing sweating in the armpits and the axilla. And it works great. Kicks in about 2 weeks, lasts about 6 months. And studies show that if you get multiple treatments on a regular 6-month basis, it can last up to 9 months. So it works very, very nicely. And it's a game changer for people. There's also topical treatments as well. There's topical prescriptions that can be prescribed to help with sweating on the palms or under the arms. And then over the counter, there's something called aluminum chloride, and they come in different strengths. So there's all different brands, and it's aluminum chloride. And basically, whether it's aluminum chloride or base, or if it's antiperspirant that you're applying, you always want to apply at night. So the way this works, it basically forms a little bit of a plug inside of your sweat gland, and then the sweat doesn't come out as easily, right? So as we talked about, sweat is a detox organ. We don't want to stop sweating everywhere because we want to be able to detoxify. But focally in embarrassing areas like the palm soles or under your arms, you certainly can want to limit the amount of perspiration you have without affecting your detoxification throughout your body. So if you're putting on antiperspirant or aluminum chloride in the morning and you're running around and you're sweating, there's no opportunity for that product to form the chemical reaction it needs to block your sweat gland. So you want to apply it at night before you go to bed when you're not going to be sweating. Give it, a good 8 to 10 hours to work, and it forms a little bit of a plug in your sweat gland so that when you wake up and you run through the day, there's the plug there and you're not sweating. Okay, so that's how that works. So the biggest thing I see when people are saying, oh, my antiperspirant is not working, I say, are you using it in the morning or the night? And using it at night is really key. And if you're insecure about it, use it twice a day. It's okay, but definitely use it at night. And then you could use it again in the morning if you want focally. Okay. So that's hyperhidrosis. Hypodrosis is called anhidrosis. I'm sorry, I just made up that word. So sweating too little is called anhidrosis. So that just basically not sweating. And it can be life-threatening because what's the main purpose of sweating? It's temperature regulation. So detoxification is a purpose, but temperature regulation is our main purpose to sweat. So if you're not able to utilize sweating to maintain your body temperature, it can be absolutely life-threatening and you can overheat, So hyperthermia is very concerning and very serious. And really, people who have anhidrosis, I see it's a genetic condition, fortunately, very rare. And people just don't sweat. So they make cooling vests and things like that people can wear so that they can maintain a normal body temperature. And you have to avoid very hot conditions. Burns, if someone has undergone a lot of burns to their body and the body surface area, they can't sweat and temperature regulation becomes a huge issue. Dehydration and nerve disorders are other causes of anhidrosis or not sweating enough. Okay, and there's one more thing I wanted to mention before we close out is fun fact, sweat itself does not smell. So sweat all over your body, primarily from your eccrine glands, does not have any scent. From our apocrine glands in our underarms, our axilla, and our groin, sweat tends to have more of a scent. And that's because the scent of sweat comes from the bacteria. So the microbiome balance on your skin, as well as the hormonal levels in your body at the time. So it's what sweat mixes with, the bacteria on your skin and the skin microbiome and the hormone levels that cause the sweat to have a smell. So like my son wrestles, for instance, and I could always tell, I mentioned earlier that I have a really strong sense of smell, and I could always tell who he wrestled with that day or that evening based on how he smells when he comes home, because everyone has their own distinct smell. And it's interesting because, people will talk about pheromones, and our olfactory sense is very, very potent in discerning certain things from an evolutionary standpoint that are beneficial to procreation of the species and passing on our genetic material. And studies have shown, they've done tests with women smelling t-shirts of men, right? And determining their attractiveness level based off of the smell of a t-shirt. And we are attracted to someone's scent who we have a good combination or a good balance of our MHC, our major histocompatibility complex, which is part of our immune system that basically can match with someone that will make a strong offspring, right? So we are not attracted to someone whose MHCs are very similar to our own, right? Because that might indicate passing on recessive genetic material that might not be beneficial to the health and well-being of that offspring. Whereas if someone smells really good to us, that usually means that we're going to have healthier children if we mate together. So that's kind of where the scent thing comes from. But as far as sweat goes in particular, sweat per se does not smell. So if you're noticing a change in your sweat smell, of the smell of your sweat, it might indicate you have a medical condition going on if it lasts longer than a week or two. It may just be your body detoxifying something, but if it lasts longer than that, I'd get checked just to make sure everything's going okay. So I think we did a deep enough dive into skin as a detoxification organ and the benefits of sweating. And there's many ways to go about that. So I hope you enjoyed this episode. Keep bringing me your questions and clarification. You can find me on LinkedIn, Jennifer Haley, MD, dermatologist, or Instagram at Dr. Jen Haley. And I love hearing all of your questions. And we will have a future AMA coming up. I have a lot of questions, always looking for more. And reach out anytime. If you like this podcast, please subscribe. Please share with a friend. And I really would love if you wrote a written review or at least gave it a review so other people can see it as I do this, just out of my pure heart to share information with everyone and to teach you to empower yourselves to live your best life. Thank you, my friends.
If you're enjoying the Radiance Revealed podcast, please don't forget to subscribe so you'll always know when there's a new episode. And while you're at it, please give us a review, as that helps others to find this podcast. And if you want to connect with me, please visit my website, drjenhaley.com, or you can find me on Instagram at drjenhaley.
Hello, everyone. Just a friendly reminder that this podcast is for educational and informational purposes only. The statements and views expressed on this podcast are not medical advice. Opinions of guests are their own, and this podcast does not endorse or accept responsibility made for statements made by guests. Neither this podcast nor any of the information contained within it are a substitute for care by a qualified medical professional. This podcast is provided with the understanding that it does not constitute medical or professional advice or services. If you are looking for help in your journey, please seek out a qualified medical practitioner.